right. Got it. Very good. All right. All right. What do we have here?
You do have a quorum.
Okay.
I don't see, there's several people I don't see yet, but I didn't get any notification that they wouldn't be attending. I don't know if Lisa did or not.
I know that I haven't heard anything.
I didn't get any notification that anybody wouldn't be attending either.
There's Mackenzie.
Yep.
So I think I have everybody but Dr. Akers on.
Play, yeah. You know if he will be attending, or I didn't know if I should wait another minute or not, or we should be getting. What do you think?
6:01, I'd start.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. June 23rd, Seneca County Health Department Board of Health meeting. Please take a roll call. Thank you.
Dr. Akers, I think he's present. Mrs. Boroff,
Yes.
Mr. Logston,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mrs. Posey,
Yes.
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
and Dr. Wolf.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Then I'd like everyone to join me doing with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And Ann, I don't know if you have a flag or, oh, yes, we do. Thank you. Yeah. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
which
stands,
stands one nation under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Well, today looks like it's going to be very educational. We've got continuing education, and it's going to be a presentation from Joseph Durham, our attorney from Eastman and Smith, and it should be quite informative. I hope you all had a chance to send any questions you might have had in ahead of time. If you had some, I had a few. I know a couple people did. So if you got the chance, I hope you did. And this is going to be very educational, I believe, concerning what we're up with right now concerning Sunny Farms. So with that, Joseph, I welcome you and take it away, please.
Well, thank you. Yeah, good evening, board members. And you know, I want to thank you and your health commissioner for the opportunity to present tonight and to give you essentially 15 to 20 minutes of continuing education, and then hopefully we can answer questions as well. I do have some questions, so I'm going to try to share my screen here.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah, it's working.
Yes.
Yep. And sometimes when I do this, there. So can you just see the first slide?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, we just want to talk about what your authorities are as a local health district regarding the licensing of solid waste disposal facilities. I am Joe Durham with Eastman and Smith. We provide representation advice to local health districts. I've represented Franklin County Public Health for over 30 years. We have been retained by Morrow County and Perry County regarding some landfill issues, represented other health districts throughout the state of Ohio, and associations related to local health districts. In addition, regarding solid waste, we advise solid waste authorities throughout the state of Ohio, including Cuyahoga, Coshocton, Fairfield, Licking and Perry, Medina, and the Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio, among others.
Joe, your slides are not advancing.
Oh, they're not.
Nope.
It's got the preview bar on the left of your other slides and the main one on right now, the first one on.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to, let me do this. Try that again, and I'll just leave it in that. So can you see that? And then if I go down, does it move?
Yes.
Yeah, there
Yes.
you
Yeah,
go. Okay.
it's advancing.
So obviously I've been up there for a couple of years, and some of you know my background, but my grandfather was the chief solid waste officer for the predecessor of the Army Corps of Engineers during the Second World War. And he was responsible for addressing health issues related to open dumping and open burning at military establishments throughout the world, and implemented sanitary landfills, as he had worked at a landfill, one of the first landfills in the United States in California in the 1940s. So he came to Columbus and started a commercial waste hauling company. And so my family operated a commercial waste hauling company from 1948 until the early 1990s. And so essentially I grew up on trash trucks going to landfill. Now, as I mentioned, in my professional life, for 30 years, I've been advising boards of health, and almost every opinion or court case that deals with local health districts emphasizes that you're a creature to statute, and you only have those powers that are conferred by statute. And so we have certainly seen during the pandemic that the legislators have addressed some of the health district powers over the last couple of years. But as far as your regulation of landfills, that is certainly limited to what is in the statute, whether it's expressly or implied. Specifically to landfills, nobody shall operate a solid waste facility without a license that's been issued by the local health district or by the Ohio EPA. It can be by the local health district pursuant to the statute where the EPA authorizes the local health district and puts them on the approved list. And you, of course, are on the approved list. So I did issue an opinion earlier, and it asked, what if the health department didn't want to be on the approved list anymore? I've been in those meetings. I know that there's a lot of pressure from residents on the board when they have issued the license in the past. So just looking at the statute, there is no procedure to voluntarily leave, other than, I would argue, that's certainly implied based upon the standard that a board of health is both capable and willing to enforce the revised code chapters 3714 and 3734. So in addition, of course, the EPA could remove you from the approved list after an annual survey if they determine that you were not eligible to do that. What would happen whether or not the Board of Health would voluntarily or otherwise be removed from that list? You would lose the ability to license, suspend, revoke, or deny those solid waste license. And if that were to happen within 15 days of that determination, all unexpended and unencumbered fees that you've collected under the solid waste laws would have to be returned to Ohio EPA. So your actions have consequences, right? I first advised the board in January of 2019. At that time, you were dealing with a lot of complaints from citizens about the odors from the landfill. And EPA at that time was recommending approval of that license. And your actions, the board's actions at that time, what constituted the board at that time, resulted in the issuance of a notice of intent to deny that license, which resulted in the state of Ohio filing an action against the landfill. Wouldn't have happened unless you had taken that action. we went down that road, started to have a hearing to deny the license, and Ohio EPA initiated their own enforcement action. And that resulted in a consent order that regulated solid waste, air pollution, and water pollution, resulting in $1.7 million in civil penalties. So after they did that at the special meeting in August, and again in subsequent license renewals, after hearing our advice, the board approved those licenses. Why? One of the questions was why, right? So under the administrative code sections, so you shall issue the license if the operator is in substantial compliance, or as it says here, there's a legally enforceable schedule through the issuance of an administrative consent order or judicial consent order to attain compliance with chapters 3704, which is the air pollution laws of the state of Ohio, 3714, construction and demolition debris, 3734, solid waste and hazardous waste, 3745, the EPA's authorities, and 6111 of the revised code, which is the water pollution statute for the state of Ohio. So there is some case law. A Board of Health had denied the renewal of an annual license. The courts held that they could not do that if the operator was in substantial compliance with the law, and indicated that the facility was entitled for an opportunity to correct violations. So they had to be on notice of violations and an opportunity to correct to be into substantial compliance.
So they can poison us with SO2 by 20 times the amount they're allowed just because the EPA gets a kickback from it. And we have to sit back and say, okay, that's fantastic. Did you see Chris Lund's presentation?
I did. I
got a real big problem with that, saying the substantial compliance when they're way not in compliance with the Clean Air Act.
Yeah, so unfortunately, like I said, the idea that there is a legally enforceable schedule and it relates to the air as well as the solid waste, to the extent that they're in, it says that might as well be substantial compliance or this, right? So what did that complaint do? That complaint led to this consent agreement where they addressed the air pollution laws and the solid waste laws and the water pollution laws. Now, in that consent order, they're required to implement and commence operation of this control technology. And that was under paragraph 15AH of the consent order, gave them 550 days from the effective date of the permit, which is the date of the air permit that was issued on December 1st of 2021. So my calculations would suggest that under the consent order, they have to come into compliance with that by, essentially June 4th of 2023.
Of the Clean Air Act, of the Clean Air Act numbers that they're supposed to be within?
With the consent order, they have to have this control technology installed at the landfill and operational by that.
And are their numbers supposed to be within the normal limits, not 20 times what they are?
Yeah, so I'm going to address, but not only does the landfill, but Chris in his presentation and communications with Ohio EPA would indicate that everybody is going to say that they are in substantial compliance with the consent order.
Yeah, but the consent order, we know, allows them to exceed the Clean Air Act until the technology is significantly in place.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
It is.
Yeah, so I'm dealing with some other litigation regarding citizen suits raising issues too. And so they face the same hurdles because once there is a consent order entered into by the government, the standard is as long as they're diligently prosecuting those violations, which, you know, the consent orders that EPA has entered into for all of these things are certainly going to meet that standard. Now, the case law talks about it. It says, you know, you might not agree with this, and this might be the result of a settlement, and you would like it to be stricter, but the case law is very clear to say that the idea is that it's diligent prosecution and they have discretion to do it. So I did understand that you had continuing education with the Sunny Farms representative. I reviewed and spoke to Chris regarding his presentation. I understand after the presentation by the landfill, then they submitted this PTI to expand the landfill and increase the capacity. And then I also, Ann provided me with a copy of the letter that was sent back from Sunny Farms after Chris's presentation. So I did review that as well.
There is a question in the chat. It says, why is the consent order a partial consent order and what wasn't addressed?
Yeah, it was a partial consent order at the beginning because it only addressed the air and the solid waste violations. There was a second consent order that was entered into later that addressed the water pollution violations specifically. So yeah, the authorized maximum daily waste receipts currently there's 7,500 tons. The application was for 12,000. And so to me, you know, the question is, does the Board of Health have any authority regarding the daily waste receipts? So back in, wasn't 1990, that's when the decision was done. But probably 1987, the Board of Health actually denied an operating license, but they limited the daily waste receipts in doing that. And that was before the court, and the court noticed this, but it was before the statute was changed. And the current statute does say that the board may, through terms and conditions on the license, establish the authorized maximum daily waste receipts facility. Now, again, that's not unlimited discretion. It says how that has to be done and says that all terms and conditions included in that license shall be consistent with the rules adopted by the Ohio EPA. So kind of getting to your question, you know, the rules adopted by Ohio EPA say that the operator shall operate the facility in a manner that does not create a nuisance or health hazard, does not cause water pollution pursuant to Chapter 6111, or does not violate any regulation adopted under Chapter 3704, which is the air pollution statute. So to the extent that you have authority not only over solid waste, but if there were these violations and of the air laws or the water laws, and you could prove, right, that it was causing the public health nuisance, then you would have that authority, subject to this consent order that essentially ties your hands to say they're in substantial compliance.
Well, I make a motion to hire Chris Lund to come in and oversee some of our water testing and our soil testing, and have him go to an impartial lab that isn't the sampling from the landfill.
I would add to that you test for cancer causing agents, carcinogens, which they're not doing now.
I know the lab that was doing their testing wasn't even an EPA certified lab until last year.
And
I would like to have Chris Lund actually tell us what to do. Somebody that knows landfills and knows how to do sampling properly.
Correct. And we need to have somebody an outside source do it, not let
Yes, we do.
Sunny Farm do it. that's like the that's like the wolf watching, the fox watching the chicken house.
There
Yeah.
you go. There you
And
go.
I'm gonna say, so I think that motion should be made after we close out the continuing education session. Just from a
I
order.
just thought it was an appropriate time.
Yeah, no,
That's
I
why.
I
No,
appreciate.
I
that.
agree. I agree with Joseph that it's more after the presentation. We'll have the discussion in that motion if you wish. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So essentially, you're going to get another application to renew the license coming up here. At this stage, I just see no basis for denial, as I've said in 2019 after the consent order, in 2020 and 21. The landfill representatives, your consultant, and EPA have all indicated that they're in substantial compliance with the consent order at this point. Now, the object, whether or not you would object to this increase for the landfill capacity, the law requires that your actions be lawful and reasonable. And so clearly they would be lawful because we've just looked at the authority you have to address the AMWR as terms and conditions to the license. The question of whether or not would it be reasonable, it seems like to me, right, that the board would want to know that the landfill was going to comply with the consent order's control technology requirements prior to increasing their capacity. They entered into this consent order, agreed to have this done. They're not done. They have more time to do it. But at the same time, it seems reasonable that you wouldn't want them to increase their capacity until you find out that they're in compliance with this consent order.
Absolutely.
How would you do that? I think you could make comments right now to the Ohio EPA based upon their PTI application. You could certainly submit comments after they issue a draft permit. Those could be addressed with the landfill as an agreed terms and conditions, if they would agree to that going forward. Or really, and I think the last resort here would be if you were to propose that as a term and condition, it may be subject to challenge, but to me, it seems lawful and reasonable. So the questions that I've posed, and I didn't get, a couple of them came in last week and I didn't get them incorporated here into the PowerPoint, but the questions again related to, can the Commerce Clause be changed? As one of my partners said, not in my lifetime, probably. So the interstate transport of solid waste is protected by the Commerce Clause and it's been upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States. It's just, you're not going to stop the out-of-state waste
Capitalism.
from coming in.
Nope. Capitalism reigns.
You did it in Kentucky.
Sorry.
Well, that it might not have been
And
challenged.
apparently this host, it was a challenge, but I mean, I think it might have to do with the host agreement and things like that.
Yeah, so there are, so government facilities have more leeway under the Commerce Clause and with the way the state is set up currently with our solid waste management districts. But it's still difficult. And to the extent that we have a private facility bringing waste in, the Commerce Clause is going to trump that. Another question was, does the consent order prevent US EPA from stepping in? It does not. And they could come in. I think it's unlikely here. They have delegated authority under the Clean Air Act to the Ohio EPA. And if the US EPA looks at this consent orders, both of the consent orders, I think they're going to probably find that EPA is diligently enforcing the Solid Waste Laws, Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act. I understand not everybody may agree with that, but I think from a legal standpoint, it's probably unlikely that US EPA would then come in to do that. The other questions that I received from Ann, what conditions can the health department place on the yearly permit? Can we limit the type of waste accepted, like contaminated soil that has no tipping fees? You know, I'm gonna just jump back up here. So the issue is, could you limit in terms and conditions these things, and would that be consistent with the rules? You know, under the rules, the EPA does have disposal restrictions for what a landfill can accept, but contaminated soil is not one. So
They admitted at their meeting that they brought it in, but it was underneath the threshold level, even though
Yes.
it was the PCB. So, I mean, well, if you have it in a glass, it's poison, but if you have it in a ton of dirt, it's not.
right, so certainly if it's a hazardous waste, it's prohibited. If it's PCB contaminated and it doesn't meet the test, it is an issue of, if you were to, let's say this contaminated soil, right? I mean, if you were going to limit their acceptance of that waste stream, you would have to have evidence to show that was reasonable. So there would have to be, as you said, your water sampling shows that this contaminant has been found, and you could have a direct link to this type of contaminant. Very difficult to show. And so it's difficult to get around the rules, which don't prohibit it and don't give you any discretion.
That's obvious. That's why they were written that way.
Yeah. The other questions, shouldn't the health department get involved in the investigation of numerous health complaints, respiratory illness surrounding the landfill, and with the non-compliance with the Clean Air Act? You know, I hate to keep going back, right? But to the extent that they're in substantial compliance with the regulations, it's hard to say that they're in violation. Now, that being said, if the health department has evidence, we have complaints, right? But if there's nothing preventing the health department from studying those type of effects or complaints, whether or not they're linked to the landfill is more difficult.
That would take years of time to establish any kind of a trend or a link there, as far as I understand, in the medical industry. Years and years of time of research in order to figure out there was a trend or any kind of real connection, and even then they would debate it. So that one seems to be very, I don't know, tough way to go.
Yeah, those cases are very difficult. The studies, US EPA spends millions of dollars trying to make those determinations and tie health risk associated to landfills.
Yeah.
I can say that I did my college independent study trying to do the same thing back in the 80s, addressing health issues and landfills, Superfund sites in Ohio, running regression analysis and trying to correlate all of those things are very difficult. Epidemiology, it's very hard to tie the cause and the effect.
That I think that was my point, Joseph. One question I have is, bottom line, does the consent order allow them to emit more sulfur dioxide than the Clean Air Act?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I believe.
Yes or no? I mean, I was just wondering, yes, I don't care about the percent, how many times. 2 times is too high over the EPA Clean Air Act for me. I'm just wondering, does that consent order allow them to exceed the Clean Air Act level?
To the extent that it's a negotiated settlement and they have this compliance date, so that I believe that yes, to the extent that they are not in compliance now and they are going to get there by attainment through apparently if they are in compliance with this consent order.
So they
And then again,
basically have
there's-
a free pass until that date that the EPA gave them.
Unless, of course, that the EPA would say they're in violation and they're in violation of the consent order right now. And unfortunately, yeah, so there are some local air authorities in the state of Ohio, but not in your jurisdiction. It's the Ohio EPA. Another question was whether I was going to represent the board at what was supposed to be a public hearing by the EPA on the landfill's Title V air permit, which was scheduled for next week, which I understand has now been postponed until August. I haven't been engaged to do that. Quite frankly, as far as you know, a Title V air expert, I am not going to hold myself out that would be the representation. I think we could find somebody else if you want an attorney to do that. But I would think that your consultant has those capabilities. And so
Isn't Wes the air expert that we have, everybody on the board?
Wes from Trinity is a person who was hired by Chris Long.
Right.
Yes, our expert.
Okay.
I think we talked about some of the water testing. You guys have already addressed that. I'm not sure there are any more questions that I haven't addressed. Are there any? I haven't looked in the chat here. Yeah, I don't know if US EPA is investigating anything myself. And I guess at this point, I'll ask if there are any other questions for me.
Joe, could you review again the 4 different actions that you discussed that the board could potentially take?
Sure, for objecting to the AMWR. Yeah, so I think it's make comments now. And there's no reason to wait if you believe that they shouldn't have an expansion until they're actually in complete compliance with the consent order. Or you can wait until the EPA issues some sort of draft permit on that. Now, the agreed upon terms and conditions could be that if you go to the landfill and ask and say, look, you know, we don't think you should expand your capacity until after you come into compliance and install this control technology. I'm assuming they're probably on here right now, and that discussion could take place at another time with them. Or the last option would be to independently do it. As I said earlier, it just has to be lawful and reasonable.
Well, the question I have is this equipment that they're installing is designed to get them into compliance with what they're taking in now. But if you double the capacity, almost, is it going to be in compliance after? Is the equipment going to be sufficient to take care of that, or are they going to give them another 36 months?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think
Yeah,
another
that's what-
question.
Oh.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that seems why it would be reasonable to say, don't expand until you come into compliance.
And you mentioned not being able to approve or deny rather based off of the the amount of information or the substantial compliance that they have due to the consent order, but would it be feasible to deny that based off of some other means, like the inability to come into compliance over X amount of time, or questionable ability of the company with the turnover and things like that? I think that was mentioned in Chris's presentation before, like leadership turnover and different things, that there's only been a couple people that have been staples, so questionable ability of the company or things like that.
Yeah, my experience is that would be very difficult. I had somebody look at the EPA website. I think there's over 300 entries since January of 2021. There's no notices of violation. So EPA would have to put
They
them
haven't
on.
been here in 2 years though, the EPA.
Right. So, I mean, under that case law that I showed you, not only, if they're in substantial compliance, but you got to give them the opportunity to come in compliance, which means you need to notify them of what they're not in compliance of. And so that would need to take place. I think I put on that slide, those things could happen in the next 6 months. I don't know. But right now, based upon the fact that I haven't seen any NOVs, I heard Chris's testimony say they're in substantial compliance. I mean, I just don't know what basis I could advise the board to go down that road.
I know that I've seen exceedances over the 15 parts per million in the past. Several of them, or many of them, are discounted because the wind direction doesn't make sense, or the meter reading was erroneous, like exceeded 500, something like that, so it looked like a false reading. But there are a few of them that were in there. They were in the 20s and up to 40. No notice of violation was ever issued because the Ohio EPA is the only one that can issue the notice of violation with relation to air. Now, why would they ever issue a notice that would cause them issues, that would cause things to be not in consent with the consent order? I just don't see this working. They've got no NOVs because the people that would do the NOV won't give them one because that would cause themselves trouble. That's the way I see it.
I agree.
I think an important piece to keep in mind is thinking about our food service operations and other types of facilities that we inspect. We look at it as, is there a trend here? It's not one single incident. Is there continuing incidents of this? Or are they, if we point something out, are they correcting that at that time and taking action to prevent that from happening again? So I know in many types of facilities that we inspect, it's not based upon one single, usually it's not, unless it's especially egregious. It's not based on one single instance of something being out of compliance. It's a more of a trend, an ongoing thing that they're not correcting, not specifically the landfill, but anybody that we regulate in some way.
Well, they should do speeding tickets like that then.
That would be awesome.
1 mile an hour over, you got a ticket. Oh, sorry. Oh, you didn't have that trend. You're okay. Anyways.
You tried your best. You were substantially compliant. You were close to the speed limit.
That's right. And I know that when I first became involved with this landfill opposition, that the health board at that time denied their license. They issued the intent to deny, and the landfill just kept operating and nothing changed. I mean, when you say nothing changed, oh, we're cleaning it up, we're getting better, but they just kept on rolling money in and bringing in as much trash as they did before. So I didn't really know, how do you know they're actually going to improve themselves? And then the other thing that I understand too is that recently we had the federal EPA here in Fostoria looking at our new waste treatment plant facility. It's being upgraded, $15 million increase and everything. And that they're telling us as a city, we will not give you the license that you comply until you prove it runs for a year and meets the Water Act. So
Really?
yes, 1 year. And I'm wondering now,
And-
I want to see them run their gas scrubbing facility for a year with no exceedances before they even talk about this. Same standard. So sorry.
I agree.
Sounds good to me.
I digress. So. All right. Well, Joseph, I'm trying not to shoot the messenger here. Sorry. The legal aspects of this are frustrating.
I understand.
We're now in the position where everybody thinks that we have some sort of real control over this, even though flat out you see there's nothing we can do because they're with compliance per the consent order. Even if we don't agree with the consent order, but that's what they are compliant with. So they're clear that way. No violations. So we're supposedly have no basis now. And people expect us to somehow stand up and protect them. And I don't know how. That's my issue right now. So
I understand. At the same time, I would not advocate that you give that authority back to the EPA without any local control.
Is there any way that we can get the authority to violate them for the AIR Act?
The EPA,
Yeah, is there a way the health department can violate them, issue a violation for the Clean Air Act, or is there a way for us to obtain that authority to, let's fire out some violations so that a year from now we have
Well,
foot in the ground.
can we talk to the federal EPA about their exceedances of the SO2 and all that?
so.
I mean, Ohio has absolutely, the Ohio EPA has given them free pass.
So in a roundabout way, right? So if you have evidence that they're violating a regulation of 3704, that could be issued as a notice of violation under 37452719. I don't know what the standard, but the one I read to you that says they have to be in compliance with the air law. So you could do it under the solid waste law saying they violated this, but but you're gonna need
So the health department did a test on their own.
the
Like, we're not
evidence.
contracted to do that. We do it through the soil and the water, but if they did one.
Yeah,
I see we got a request from Wes to comment here. If we could let him talk or speak, I'd appreciate it too. Our air expert.
Yep.
Go ahead, Wes.
I think the last comment about that indirect citation through solid waste is interesting. The idea of a 12-month wait and see period on the new emission control equipment, I think is excellent, and it actually kind of aligns with how the consent order and their emission limits work. They're already technically subject to an emission limit that right now the consent order is protecting them from.
What about life?
479 tons per year. And that tons per year is a 12-month rolling period. So I think it would look very reasonable to say, once compliance with that limit has been restored, not just via consent order protection, then we may be able to support an expansion. I'd also say, I know there's interest in the draft Title V permit. It's been a few months, but I have reviewed that draft, and I would try to refocus your attention and energy a little bit on the PTI application rather than the Title V. The Title V is a bit more of an administrative permit about monitoring and record keeping requirements. And in practice, what's in the draft is pretty good. It's about what you would expect, right? It's not deciding new emission rates or what they can and can't do generally. The PTI, on the other hand, decides whether or not they can change from what, 7,500 tons to 12,000 tons. That is more meaningful, and there's more room for input there, I would say. I definitely encourage the idea that, sort of separate from the question of legal authority, there's plenty of room for the board and or any individual members, interested citizens, et cetera, to express opinions on that. And I would say that if the board were to submit an opinion expressing concerns and, for example, wanting a 12-month wait and see kind of approach, that would be pretty strong public pressure on Ohio EPA in the absence of formal authority to, veto the thing. So I think that's interesting, and maybe more beneficial. Trying to think now, do we know that the emission control equipment that they're installing now is sized for the additional larger emission rates? I think that would be a great comment to ask in the PTI application. Hey, Ohio EPA, was this equipment already prepared, or do they need to make further modifications? They've already had a lot of emissions sort of on credit, right? They keep emitting more than they are allowed. This time around, at least, we want them to be allowed first and work their way maybe up to the line. Don't start over the line, right?
Correct.
Oh, let's see. There were a lot of points. I'm trying to remember them all now. US EPA. I agree that with council that there's a limited possibility of US EPA intervention because there is already a consent order. Oftentimes a consent order will keep US EPA away because they figure things are under control. On the other hand, I have noticed that throughout this consent order and the previous ones, Ohio EPA has been very careful to not directly address the PSD violation associated with the large unpermitted emission increase that occurred, right? Violating the 479 ton per year limit. That 479 ton per year limit was supposed to keep them out of PSD permitting, but then they violated the limit. So there may still be something there, and definitely US EPA, in terms of the things that they like to enforce on in the air world, a PSD violation is the very top of the list.
Who the hell is talking?
Right now, that is Wes Younger, who is our air expert with Trinity Consulting.
Thanks, Ed. I tried to turn on my camera incidentally, but I don't have rights right now. So let's see, that's the US EPA side. Can we talk to US EPA and see if they'll tell us whether or not they're enforcing? You can try. We can try. I don't know. They might tell us no. I don't think they'll tell us if the answer is yes, because that would mean they're in the middle of a big investigation. So there might be something there. It's hard to say for sure whether or not they will go after it. It's within the realm of possibility. But again, they could also conclude that things are taken care of. We're also a little bit in a new world in the environmental justice situation. The new administration has made that a big priority. And all of the federal metrics, at least, for identifying environmental justice communities say that this one isn't. So maybe not on the priority list. That's about all I can say for reading the tea leaves.
Okay, all right.
Oh, one other thing. There is a mechanism rarely used. Usually green groups are the ones that use it, but there is a mechanism for the public or a group to petition EPA to object to at least a PSD permit and maybe a Title V operating permit. I don't think there is a federal procedure to object to the state PTI permit that would be issued for this expansion. Although I haven't read over that application to see exactly what mechanisms it's using. If it's a PSD permit, then there will eventually be an opportunity for an objection.
Do we know what type of permit? Is that something we are aware of?
Without reading the full application, I can't tell you. It may be a PSD application. If they already have 479 tons of SO2, unless they can claim zero increase, it's probably a PSD application. So there's a possibility there.
Thank you.
And just, throwing things at the wall, quite frankly, the idea that if there was evidence that the landfill wasn't in compliance with the consent order, right? And then, what I'm hearing is people saying, well, EPA is not going to go enforce that. I don't know, but if I haven't heard that they're not in compliance, but if they were, then I think one of the things that we didn't like in 2019 was that we weren't at the table when the consent orders were negotiated. And so legally, and it's weird because the case is essentially closed, right? But the consent order is still being enforced. So the board could move to intervene as a party, as an interested party into that action. Now, I think that Ohio EPA may object to that and the landfill would object to that, but you're the licensing authority for at least the solid waste portion of that. And so a court may consider and allow you to intervene. And in that instance, you would then be able to allege contempt that they weren't in compliance with the consent order. I'm not recommending that, but I think the board needs to know all of their options.
That was interesting because that was my impression, that it seemed like there wasn't really any public involvement in the consent order.
No.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate that.
If we do that, will the Ohio EPA drop us as a licensing entity and then we lose all power?
They may.
Yeah, keep that in mind, guys.
Well, why don't we sue the EPA then? If that were the case, that would be fantastic news. On go out there in the public, seeing that the EPA wants to systematically poison our community by not following the federal air recommendations.
I would probably caution that we work with the EPA on lots of different programs, not just this one. And so such an action would jeopardize more than the landfill, our ability to inspect the landfill. So I would just be cautionary about that.
So that's kind of like the city of Fostoria writing a resolution to oppose and then losing their recycling bins or any kind of, things from the OSS. So, okay. Do this or else. All right.
All right. Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
That's socialism.
God sakes, give it up.
Oh, it's capitalism, Bob. Do this or else.
Hey, quit.
No, it's unfettered to capitalism.
We've answered
Yeah.
enough questions this evening.
Yeah.
Don't
So-
need to go any further.
Joe, I have a real quick question. and the consent order, do we know for a fact that the new emission control device is supposed to get them in compliance with the Clean Air Act? Is that stated? I mean, does it ever say that this new equipment must bring you in line with the Clean Air Act or not? Because if it doesn't state that, who's to say that they won't let them float along at some level above that forever?
Yeah, I don't think it overtly states that. I just know that, they still have a certain number of days to come into compliance with that consent order, which is their control technology. So,
Right, but if there's no numbers attached to that, what does that really, where is that taking us? We expect to see an improvement, but how much improvement?
right. I mean, obviously, when that permit was after the consent order and that it was applied for this technology, and EPA approved that back in December of 2021, I guess. That's when that
Could that
was
be a
addressed.
condition on the
That's when
license?
that was addressed. Yep. So I think we would have
Can
to
we
go
flat
back.
out say you must be in compliance with the Clean Air Act
Done.
to give it a firm number?
Health board.
And I don't know if Chris or anybody's looked at, that permit from December of 2021 would be where that answer is. I don't have that answer right now.
The December permit provides a 479 ton per 12-month period limit on SO2 emissions, which they'll need that technology to be in place for about a year to get down to that level.
Yeah.
It's plausible that it will work. There's no guarantees. It can't, I mean, this technology can work, right?
Yeah.
They can still have a comedy of errors or who knows what to potentially happen, but it should be able to get them there.
If you guys don't get on, I'm leaving.
What's Bonnie? I'm sorry, what's wrong?
I said, if you don't move forward with the agenda of the Board of Health this evening,
Okay.
then I am leaving.
Okay. I think we've had a lot of good information presented by Joseph Durham and by Wes.
Well, of course, but you can't
Yeah.
recreate the information over and over and over and over again before you go on to do what is your responsibility as the Board of Health Agenda Health Board meeting.
Okay. Point taken. Thank you. So with that, I think that this concludes our continuing education session. It was both informative and current, so we can move along. With that, thank you, Joseph. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wes.
All right. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
evening.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wes.
Informative. Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Thanks, Wes.
To continue on, the next item on the agenda, ironically, is approval of consent agenda. That word somehow. Anyways, approval of consent agenda includes the meetings, the WIC division report, nursing division report, the environmental division report, and the health commissioner's activity report. Is there any discussion about any of those items? Any questions, anything there? Okay. Not hearing anything. Do I have any motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move to approve the consent agenda.
Get a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Please take a roll call.
Mrs. Boroff,
Yes.
Mr. Logston,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mrs. Posey,
Yes.
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
and Dr. Wolf.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's see here, the next item now on the agenda. Actions and discussion. We got the health commissioner's report from Ann. And Ann, I'd let you take that away.
Sure. So I have a couple verbal things to tell you, and then I have a brief PowerPoint to review the one report that was included. Wanted to give a construction update. As you are aware, the building is under construction. They've moved into phase 2. That was the beginning of this week. Phase 2 involves the actual main parking lot is what's impacted on the outside, but they'll be replacing the exterior of the building, putting in windows, which will impact our environmental health area, and then actually making it fully handicap accessible. So what that entails is that the parking lot is closed and that entrance is closed. The sole way in and out of the health department is our back door and our back parking lot. And so, you know, that led to me looking for alternatives for our staff. We have several staff that are going to be teleworking or working remotely during various different parts of the project. Some because of some limitations inside the building, not making it fully handicap accessible. And some because when we, for example, open up the wall to put in the windows, that will impact our environmental health staff. So several staff are approved for telework. I anticipate several more may ask for, or we may ask them to do that. But that's coming. The construction is anticipated to last probably into December. So I reached out to colleagues across the county to ask if any of them had a facility that they would be that they would allow the Board of Health to use for its meetings, because literally we have 9 parking spots, but we have 9 board members. You know, so just being able to access the building would not be very just won't work very well. So we do have several possibilities. One agency that's actually come forward and say, we can accommodate you. Several others that have asked for more information. So I don't know for sure where our July meeting will be, but it won't be here in our facility. I specifically asked folks for locations that can accommodate 9 board members, 6 to 8 staff, and an unknown number of community members, and have good IT services available. So, so those are the minimums. I have reached out to law enforcement as well to find out which law enforcement agency would be the one that we would ask for security, depending upon where the location is. So waiting to hear back on that. So that's the.
Have you checked the NCOA building?
NCOESC.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is the one who has already come forward and offered their building.
That's fantastic location. It's big.
Following up on the bylaws discussion last month of tabling that until we had heard back from the DAC. Reached out to Tony Paradiso, Commissioner Paradiso, because he's currently the chair of the DAC, and had that conversation verbally and then put it into writing, suggesting a method for achieving a geographic balance or geographic representation from across the county. You know, I'm awaiting a response. I know Tony was out on vacation last week, so we just have not had the opportunity to reconnect. And I know, you know, it can be done formally or it can be done informally. And so I know he's going to need to sound out DAC members regarding, you know, would they prefer a formal way of doing this or an informal, you know, just like a policy for doing this. So that one's on hold. But the question I have relating to that is, do you want me to proceed with a posting about the vacancy created by Phil Stires' resignation now, or do you want me to wait until I hear back from the DAC or from, you know, the chairperson regarding if they intend to revise their bylaws in some way or agree to an informal policy about the representation on the board?
It seems unless we know what they feel is appropriate, if you ask people for interest, they may be interested, but they're not the people in the area that you're trying to find them in the township areas. So I don't know if that's going to help or not. I know I recently received an email resume from a person, and I think copied everybody. But again, just trying to see, does the DAC agree with this procedure so that everyone feels it's open and fair? So my opinion is that we need to hear from them to make sure that we're doing what they agree to.
I can do that. I'll follow up with Tony when I get back from it. And then the final piece is a strategic planning update. So I'm going to share screen hopefully and pull that up. So are you able to see? Let's see here.
Yes.
Okay, let me put it into slideshow and let me know if I advance it. Are you able to see it? Did that advance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is to provide you with an update on our strategic planning process. There basically are 6 steps that are outlined here on this slide, moving from the first steps of looking at re-examining our vision, mission, and values, and then all the way to developing strategic goals and objectives and actual action plans for implementing those steps. So step 1 was around developing or revisiting our vision, mission, and our values. And so just as a reminder, we did that finished that late last year. So this is our new version of our vision and mission statement, as well as updating our core values to include honesty, compassion, teamwork, and dependability. And then as a piece of that as well, updated our logo. So step 2 was identifying our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which most people are familiar with being a SWOT analysis. There's also another technique called a SOAR analysis, which is strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. And so what I really have used is a combination of those two. So we did that via survey, sort of, and group discussion. So each one of our divisions had a group discussion at their staff meeting and identified strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and also aspirations and results. And then each group entered that into SurveyMonkey so that we have a way of summarizing it all. So those are built upon our pillars. So we ask people to address strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, et cetera, for each one of our 5 pillars, our priority areas. So in what was sent to you as part of the meeting packet and what are on the following slides, it summarizes the strengths across all 5 of those pillars. There's several different ways I could present the information. I thought this way probably made the most sense because you could see all the strengths all at once, all the opportunities, et cetera. So you'll notice in our strengths across many areas, it really centers around our staff, the services they provide, the knowledge and experience they have, the years of service, the way they provide services, and some improvements that we have underway currently. There's some references to, new technology coming and, and then also noting we're accredited. So that's obviously a strength too. Looking at weaknesses, you'll notice these focus a lot on, from a personnel standpoint, an HR standpoint, some communications kinds of things. Some, it's really about the skills and the right mix of skills needed for the future rather than for the past or the present. And then, looking at areas where we're currently not really being proactive. So, looking at how we could better use technology. We certainly are not as far along as many other health departments in our use of technology. And that's a common complaint from the public of, well, what do you mean you can't take a debit card or, those kinds of things? Why can't I renew my license online? Thinking about opportunities, those things present opportunities for sure. Training, we have training opportunities that we can take advantage of that are low cost or no cost, that we could expand on what we've been doing already. Certainly looking at ways of better connecting with our residents in Fostoria, and making services more accessible there, in addition to doing our services in Tiffin. Ways to increase communications with both residents, but also partners and elected officials. And then thinking about threats, I think this slide does a really nice job of summarizing the impact of COVID and the landfill on all of the staff, not just our environmental health staff. I think you see a common theme across all of these, that the negativity that comes from the results of having to work through a pandemic, a public health emergency, combined with the ongoing challenges of having to deal with the landfill, creates a lot of stress for all of our staff, makes them feel unsafe and not secure in the building necessarily, or when leaving the building and going elsewhere in public. I think those are important things to keep in mind of, that one of the challenges for the board is balancing your responsibility to your staff, your personnel that you employ, with your obligation to also protect the health of the community. You really have an obligation to both, an obligation to the health and safety and security of your staff and the health and safety of residents as well. Looking at aspirations, and this question really was around 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, what is it that that we want to be or we want to achieve to be a higher functioning health district. And so, you can see mentioned here, increased use of technology, not surprising, creating some more innovative programs, expanding what we can do, the variation of our funding stream, so we're not solely dependent upon so many grants. And how do we deal with the challenges of the landfill? You'll notice several comments there in the people section about, and really the service section too, about how do we approach what we may have to do in the future related to the landfill. And then the results, and I think these are very valid results. They're not in measurable terms necessarily at this point, but they're something we can easily work with and get to that point, because ultimately you want your strategic plan to feed into your performance management system to measure how well are you implementing and achieving your goals related to people, service, quality, growth, and finance. And so there's some great suggestions here, but I think the one in finance really summarizes it the best. Of giving us the best ability to deliver on our vision and our values, the best ability to be a great place to work, to provide valuable services to the public, to be proactive instead of reactive, to take advantage of technology to be more efficient and effective in providing services. I think that really nicely summarizes what it is that we want to try to accomplish. So that's emphasizing we've completed steps 1 and steps 2. We're preparing to do step 3 now. And really from steps 3 through step 6, I really plan to pull together a group, but I really need board members to participate in the strategic planning process as well. And so, if you want to reach out to Ed, if you're willing to participate in steps 3, 4, 5, or 6 to help us have that board member level of input, that'd be very valuable. So that's the end of my presentation.
All right. Thank you, Ann.
That's nice, good.
Yes.
And
Good
I
info.
will try to stop sharing now. There we go.
Very good. We're back. Thank you, Ann. That was interesting. It's always good to think ahead about your strengths, weaknesses, and what your potential threats and what do you do about it so you can plan. So topical items. So the next agenda item is personnel actions. And I'm seeing out of state county or out of county or state travel, we've had none. So no action there. And number 2, though, is the resolution concerning a new employee. So with that, we have a resolution 2022.13 approving the employment of Stephanie Hayward as WIC breastfeeding peer helper. That's effective 7/5/2022. Can I get a motion to approve that resolution?
I'll move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Please take a roll call.
It looks like Bonnie has left the meeting, so Mr. Logston,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mrs. Posey,
Yes.
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
and Dr. Wolf.
Yes.
Thank you. Next agenda item is the policy actions. First is condemnations, and there are 2 of them. I'm wondering if I can read them both and we can decide at the same time on both, I believe. Don't see any discussion there. If somebody has a discussion or wants just something about either one of them, let me know. But the first one of them is 7343 North County Road 75, Green Springs, Ohio, 44836. It was owned by William Holmes, same address, deceased. Unfortunate. And then the second address, 3445 North County Road 43, Public, Ohio, 44867, owned by James E. Eisenhower, same address. So we have 2 condemnations, and the pictures were included in the packets that were sent. Can I get a motion, please? Or is
I'll
there any-
move.
Okay, thank you. Second, anyone?
I'll second. It's Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Please take a roll call.
Well, there's discussion first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Discussion. Sorry. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, I just like from Laura, they're unsecure. They're just, tell me why I'm allowed to condemn it.
Did you? Oh, you didn't see the photograph of the.
I see them, but
Yeah.
as long as we're within the rules, I'd like to
Did you
make
see
sure.
my report? One of
Yeah.
them,
I'm,
they were
No,
both
I-
essentially hoarder situations. The one where the man died, it was so severe that was actually the cause of his death. I have not been inside that particular house, so you did not get an interior shot, but I have spoken with the attorney that's handling the estate, and they are already beginning the clean out process. The other one, actually, Anne has already condemned as an emergency condemnation, but we're looking for you to simply uphold that. And
Okay.
that's the interior picture that you did receive, and they all look like that. We have lots of pictures.
okay, that's all I was looking for was.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Take a roll call, please.
Mr. Logston,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mrs. Posey,
Yes.
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
and Dr. Wolf.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we're now financial transactions and payment of bills. Let's see here, bring this up. The fiscal report. These are expenditures for 5/19/22, 5/26/22, June 2nd, 22, June 9th, 22 are included in the board packets labeled vouchers that had the word payment of bills handwritten on the top. So we received those. And here are the total expenditures for each of the notable items there in the funds. So Fund 033 was swimming pools for $18.15. Fund 51 was manufactured home parks, $6.05. Fund 60, Board of Health General Fund, $21,085.27. Vaccines, $13,390.91. Fund 62, which is water systems, $128.35. Fund 67 is food service at $309.10. Fund 81, which is the seniors clinic, $16.50. Fund 82, WIC, $1,810.07. Here's a big one, Fund 089, which is the construction and demolition debris. That's $230,835.39. That's a major expenditure. Remit to the state, $196,158.82. The county gets $11,103.33. Township gets $14,804.44. Gershman, Brickner, and Bratton are consultants for the landfill. April 22, we were paid $8,639 for the consulting fee. Fund 96, integrated naloxone, sorry, $362.56 for that fund. Public health emergency preparedness enhancement operations for 2021. We spent $14,964.15. Timekeeping software, $6,225. We returned some unspent grant funds, $6,997.14 for contact tracing 2020 grant. And then we had a setup cost for new computers of $1,500. Last two here are funds 145, COVID-19 vaccinations. We spent $47.08. And then Fund 164, home sewage treatment systems, expenditure of $1,262.85. Okay. So we had some transfers, interdepartment transfers. Or do I keep following up here? Let me know if I'm doing out of order here with this, Lisa. Should I be following up with the financial transaction? I can't even say it. Financial transaction information.
We should be doing the voting for the May bills.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's
Yeah.
what I was going to. Thank you very much. Okay, so in the May and June cash advances, there were none.
Those aren't the May bills,
Oh,
actually.
I apologize.
So item 2A1 is one action item. Two are different action items.
Oh, payment of bills. Got it. All right, I got one is payment of bills, financial transaction. So what am I missing here on my agenda? As far as what I should be doing next.
Basically, you're seeking a motion to approve the payment of the bills or the voucher.
All
approval
those
forms.
things I just read off there. Yes, all those
Right,
expenditures.
but actually it's like 4 or 5 pages that you get electronically.
Well, that's true. All the expenditures
It's
we
all of
had,
those
all those, yeah,
expenditures,
the bill of payment, the bills, and then
Yeah.
our expense reports and all the cash positions for the month and everything else. Is there any questions on any of that or discussion concerning that? May and June payment of bills.
This is Bob. I will move to pay the bills.
Okay,
I will second.
thank you. Take a roll call, please.
Mr. Logston,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Ms. Posey,
Yes.
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
and Dr. Wolf.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, let me see. approval of intra-fund transfers, cash transfers, and cash advances. So for May and June cash advances, there were none. There were no May and June cash advance paybacks or repayments. There were none. Okay. May and June cash transfers, fund transfers, none. Okay. That makes it easy. May and June intra-fund transfers, appropriations. Okay. So the first one, we're transferring $2,500 from 708901745304, the construction and demolition debris miscellaneous equipment, to the construction and demolition debris miscellaneous advertising. Ah, okay, that was for the advertising done, I'm sure.
And that helped pay for the postcards that were sent.
Exactly, the mailing. Can I get a motion on that to approve?
Also move.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second, I'm not sure you do these all one at a time or if you do them all together.
Yeah, you can do all three of those together.
Okay. I don't want to jump too fast because there may be discussion. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to be cautious. All right. So we had the $2,500. I'll just read them all then. So we'll hold on the motion in a second. $1,000 were also transferred from the Board of Health General Fund miscellaneous equipment to the Board of Health General Fund out of county travel. $1,000. Okay. And then we had $2,000 from the integrated naloxone miscellaneous supplies to the integrated naloxone in county travel. So money's moved for travel purposes. So now we have all three items that we did the transfers on. I have a motion. Does it still stand?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Second, still stand.
Yes.
Very good. Take a roll call, please.
Mr. Logston,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mrs. Posey,
Yes.
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
and Dr. Wolf.
Yes.
Thank you. There were no supplemental appropriations. Good. Okay. We're up to the contracts and agreements. Looks like the first two items deal with the same Mohawk local schools. Trying to make sure I have clarification on those two there.
Yeah,
Are they-
actually, they're for different time periods, Ed. So the addendum,
Oh,
the addendum is for an extension of hours for the current school year that just ended. And then the following one, number two, is for the next school year.
got it. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm.
They were close looking and I.
Yeah, they
didn't
look
catch
about the
that.
same. Yep.
I didn't catch that. Thank you. Very good. So I'll take those two items, 1 and 2 together. Does that seem reasonable for everybody? They're both about the same school district.
You do all five, Ed. You do
You
the
want to do them
whole.
all together? Okay. Because we have a bunch of excavating and thing for home sewage treatment plants that are a little bit different. So I'll do it all. The addendum for the local schools for nursing services from 7/1/21 to 6/30/2022. Original amount not to exceed $48,990. The new amount not to exceed $52,717.50. It's 105 extra hours and we're the payee. Mohawk Local School District for Nursing Services. It's for the period from 7/1/2022 to 6/30/2023. It's not to exceed $50,715. We're the payee. Next item's A&D excavating for home sewage treatment installation on Marl property. It's 6/15/2022 to 9/12/2022, not to exceed $21,174. Says or payer. So A&D Excavating LLC for home sewage treatment system installation on Siri property. 6/15/2022 to 9/12/2022, not to exceed $15,344 for the payer. A&D Excavation LLC for home sewage treatment systems installation on Shum property. June 12th, 2022 to September 12th, 2022, not to exceed $10,924. Final, A&D Excavating LLC for home sewage treatment system installation on Devonter property, June 17th, 2022 to September 14th, 2022, not to exceed $16,774. We're the payers. The last contractor agreement item is Oriana House Incorporated, Crossway for nursing services. It's from 7/1/2022 to June 30, 2023, not to exceed $27,195 for the payee. All right. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Can I get a motion?
This is Bob. I so move.
Thank you. Second,
I will second.
thank you. Please take a roll, please.
Mr. Logston,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mrs. Posey,
Yes.
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
and Dr. Wolf.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much. With that, I believe we're gotten down to where it says, I get to go and sign documents sometime. So I apologize if the meeting was longer than some maybe felt. I thought it was very beneficial, the information we received. We have a lot to think about.
I have a question.
Sure.
So all the things that we discussed earlier and our options for action, at what point do we do anything formally, or like the suggestions that were made? When does what do we do with any of that? There was lots of discussion tonight, but if there's a feeling one way or the other of the board, or some of those action items that were recommended or discussed by either Chris or Mr. Younger, what happens?
My feeling is that it was most important comment was we should be commenting or having a board letter of comment concerning the expansion. There should be a letter of opinion sent to the EPA now, or as soon as we can get together with an agreement about what we all want to have in this letter. But our letter.
Point of order, what you should do is put it on the agenda, and then we are allowed to discuss it and do something with it. Without it being on the agenda, we are as a board supposed to stick to the agenda.
True.
That's fine. You can put it on
We
the,
can we make a motion to do some water and soil testing? We actually have an independent party doing it, not the landfill. I don't know if anybody would want to second that or not. And also make a motion to oppose the expansion of the landfill until they can be in compliance for a year.
I wouldn't be opposed to putting it on the agenda. Again, we have to put it on the agenda before we can take any action.
Okay.
Well,
Because
no,
if you don't-
we have to usually make a motion and then we'll go on discussion. Is what how I was led to believe with my
Yeah.
emotion.
I also feel like there was a time in the meeting where they asked about any other things that needed to be discussed. I don't remember hearing that portion.
That's currently not on this one. So
Correct.
how about if we say that we request that this topic be put on the agenda for the next meeting?
Yeah.
What do we do as an action? What's our action? What are we deciding to do?
There's normally a line item on the agenda for new business.
Yes.
And then that's where we would put it
Okay.
on the agenda. Because if we don't do it properly, we're all in violation.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I just didn't see it on there either, the option to even bring it up to talk about. I didn't necessarily have to talk about it, but that wasn't an option this time.
I understand that. I didn't see a way, it's not there either, so.
Mhm.
Next meeting, we need to have that as an agenda item.
Mhm.
You see the county commissioners today did a resolution to oppose the expansion of the landfill too.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
I
we
agree. We should put it on the agenda and have at it. We got to put it on the agenda.
Sounds like a good idea, and get specific and, you know,
All right,
Okay.
next meeting.
all the above.
All right. So that's a request, a formal request at next meeting. That's an agenda item. Okay, since we have no other agenda items on our agenda to discuss, right, Scott? I think we need a motion
It's-
to
Yeah,
motion to adjourn. Anybody?
I'll motion.
I'll say,
Thank you all. Thank you for your patience with me. I'm not used to running meetings like this, so.
No, it was a good meeting.
You're
appreciate
fine.
it.
It was a
Thank
good
you.
meeting.
You're doing great.
A lot of good stuff said tonight.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
thank you.
Thank you.